Teen girlfriend allegedly orchestrated murder. The Trey Wright case. First love. It's supposed to be butterflies, late-night texts, and stolen moments under the stars. But for Trey Wright, a 16-year-old boy from South Carolina, that first love became the deadliest thing in his life. On June 24, 2025, Trey's girlfriend, 17-year-old cheerleader Gianna Kissenmacher, allegedly set into motion a series of events that ended with Trey being fatally shot in the throat. He wasn't killed by a stranger in the dark. He wasn't a random victim. Authorities say he was betrayed by the very person who claimed to love him. And what makes this case even more disturbing? 10 teenagers were involved. Some allegedly helped orchestrate the murder, others stood by, and one even filmed it on their phone as though it were entertainment. This is not just a murder story. This is a chilling window into toxic teenage relationships, peer pressure, and the dangerous influence of social media. To understand Trey's story, we have to start with who he was. Trey Wright was known as funny, loyal, and protective of his friends. His classmates describe him as someone who could make people laugh no matter what mood they were in. To his family, he was a boy full of energy and promise, just beginning to figure out his place in the world. Then came Gianna. She was a cheerleader, outgoing, and always in the spotlight. From the outside, their relationship looked like a typical high school romance. A boy and girl falling for each other, caught up in the whirlwind of teenage emotions. But beneath the smiles and couple photos, prosecutors now say there were warning signs. Gianna allegedly held a kind of emotional power over Trey. Friends would later recall that he seemed to be constantly trying to keep her happy, win her approval, and protect her from anyone who upset her. What Trey may not have realized was that this wasn't just a normal teen romance. According to authorities, it was a relationship where manipulation became the foundation. The night of June 24th wasn't supposed to be anything unusual. Teens gathered, texting each other, making plans to meet. But for Trey, those plans were allegedly a trap disguised as a hangout. Investigators later pieced together messages exchanged that day. According to prosecutors, Gianna was in communication with both Trey and another teen, 18-year-old Devin Raper. Authorities believe Gianna played both sides, telling Trey one thing and Devin another. Whether it was jealousy, revenge, or sheer recklessness, Gianna allegedly orchestrated a confrontation between the two. Trey, trusting his girlfriend, showed up. He thought he was meeting his friends. Instead, he was walking straight into danger. Witnesses later described the scene as tense. Voices were raised, the air thick with anger and confusion. Then came the sound no parent ever wants to imagine: a gunshot. The bullet tore through Trey's throat. He collapsed, gasping for air, as teens screamed and scattered. Some stood frozen, unable to process what had just happened. Emergency responders rushed Trey to the hospital, but the wound was catastrophic. He was pronounced dead. In one instant, a vibrant 16-year-old's life was gone. And the most haunting part? This wasn't an accident. According to prosecutors, it was all part of Gianna's deadly orchestration. In many true crime stories, the details of the crime come from police reports, witness testimony, and forensics. But in Trey's case, there was something different, something chilling. Another teen at the scene pulled out a phone and filmed the murder. Instead of helping Trey, instead of calling 911 immediately, someone treated the confrontation like content for social media. That video became crucial evidence for investigators, but it also shocked the public. What does it say about a generation that instinctively pulls out a phone during tragedy instead of stepping in? The murder wasn't just an act of violence. It was also a reflection of how deeply our culture of recording, posting, and watching has changed the way young people respond to danger. When police began their investigation, it quickly became clear this wasn't just the act of one or two individuals. By the end, 10 teenagers were charged. Devin Raper was accused of firing the fatal shot. Gianna Kissenmacher was charged for allegedly orchestrating the setup. Others faced counts of accessory, conspiracy, and obstruction. For prosecutors, this case wasn't just about a single bullet. It was about a group of teens swept into a storm of manipulation, violence, and pure loyalty gone wrong. At the center of everything was Gianna. To the outside world, she was a cheerleader, smiling on the sidelines, leading chants, embodying school spirit. But prosecutors painted a darker picture, that of a manipulative teen who used her influence to play others against each other. They alleged she lured Trey into danger, that she encouraged the confrontation, and that she used her position in Trey's life to get him to lower his guard. It was a betrayal unlike any other, a betrayal of love, trust, and loyalty. News of Trey's murder shook South Carolina to its core. Parents asked themselves how kids so young could become entangled in something so violent. Teachers wept openly, recalling Trey's smile and the joy he brought to class. At candlelight vigils, hundreds of people gathered to mourn him. Friends told stories of how Trey could make anyone laugh, how he always had people's backs. But underneath the grief was a chilling question. How many kids knew this was coming? And why didn't anyone stop it? This case forced an uncomfortable spotlight onto teenage culture in the digital age. Peer pressure. Teens described being afraid to speak out, afraid to be uncool, afraid to step away from the group. Social media. The instinct to film instead of help revealed how phones have become shields, turning real tragedy into digital content. Toxic relationships. Trey's blind trust in Gianna highlighted the dangers of manipulative teenage love, where one partner has all the control. It wasn't just one murder. It was the collapse of an entire group of teenagers under the weight of bad decisions, digital culture, and unchecked influence. The courtroom will now determine the futures of 10 young people. Prosecutors argue this was premeditated, a setup, a conspiracy where Gianna's manipulation and Devin's gun pulled the trigger together. Defense attorneys, however, may argue these were just kids, that emotions ran high, that mistakes were made, and that none of them truly understood the consequences. But the facts remain. Trey Wright is dead. A community is broken, and 10 young lives hang in the balance. For Trey's family, nothing will bring him back. His mother described him as a boy with the biggest heart, someone who cared deeply about others. His friends remember his goofy humor, his loyalty, his kindness. In his death, Trey has become a symbol of how quickly teenage life can spiral out of control, a symbol of what happens when manipulation and violence mix. And for parents everywhere, his story is a warning to pay attention, to talk to their kids, and to recognize the warning signs of toxic relationships. Experts point out that teenage relationships can sometimes mirror adult patterns of control and abuse. Teens like Trey often lack the experience to recognize manipulation. When someone they love demands loyalty, secrecy, or risky behavior, many comply, believing it's proof of devotion. In Trey's case, prosecutors argue this blind loyalty cost him his life. This chapter of the case forces us to ask, how do we teach teens to recognize the difference between love and control? Sadly, Trey's murder isn't an isolated story. Across the U.S., teen crime has surged in recent years, often fueled by peer pressure, toxic dynamics, and social media. Cases like the Skylar Nees murder in West Virginia, where 2 teen girls killed their best friend, and the Slender Man stabbing in Wisconsin, where girls attacked a peer after an internet obsession, show a disturbing pattern. Young people are capable of shocking violence when swept up in influence, manipulation, and groupthink. Trey's story now joins this list, a heartbreaking reminder that age doesn't always equal innocence. Trey Wright should still be alive. He should still be laughing with his friends, planning his future, and experiencing the kind of love that lifts you up, not destroys you. Instead, his story stands as a warning about trust, about the dangers of manipulation, about the frightening consequences of peer pressure and toxic relationships. And above all, Trey's story is a reminder. One bad decision, one manipulative influence, One pull of a trigger can end a life and ruin countless others. If you believe stories like this must be told, if you want to help keep Trey's memory alive and shed light on the darkest truths of teenage violence, subscribe to the channel. Because here, we make sure victims like Trey Wright are never forgotten.